Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Linda Sperry, and I'm your worship associate today. And it might be a little bit of a sparse crowd because a lot of our members and friends are up in Beneville Pines for a family camp. But we're glad you're here. It looks like we've got some full seats. I'm joined by Reverend Sian Wiltshire, our minister, Steve and Susan leading our music, and our guest musician who just set the pace for today's service, Sian Wiltshire. He is a classical guitarist, as you heard. He's working on his master's at USC, and he is a Swiss American. So welcome, Sian. Karen Magoon-Pearson, our Director of Religious Education for Children and Youth, is at Beneville Pines with her family for family camp, along with many of our other congregants. We welcome you this morning. We also would like to recognize the many volunteers who have helped to put the service together. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Ahachiman and Tongva land. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community. We are bound together not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and compassion in our deeds and relationships, and we are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. To our roomers, we invite you to silence your cell phones. For our Zoomers, we invite you to say hello in the chat. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors, and it looks like we have quite a few this morning. If you're seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you'll find it here at Orange Coast. Later in the service, we'll have an opportunity for you to introduce yourself if you'd like to do so. We begin our worship with the lighting of our chalice. This morning, we're doing something a little bit different. We've asked Betsy Inger, a member since 2019, to be our virtual chalice lighter, joining me as she Zooms from her home in Laguna Woods. Before retiring, Betsy was a longtime educator in health and physical ed at community colleges, and also I understand she was an archery instructor and has been active here at our church in sermon discussion groups, book groups, and she even created a church cookbook to raise funds for the Sanctuary Project. As Betsy and I light the chalice, let us say our unison affirmation together.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another.
This we affirm together. Please join in singing our opening song.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. We will get there, heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within. And we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So this morning, we're going to be talking a fair bit about history and kind of how Unitarian Universalism is a global faith. Because we have these two branches of our tradition that merged in 1961. So the first was the Unitarians, and the second is the Universalists, and we came up with the really original name of Unitarian Universalists, right? So our Unitarian heritage was all about freedom, reason, and tolerance. So I feel like it still asks us today to guard our freedoms, to honor reason, that is science, and to invite tolerance, even justice and acceptance into our minds and hearts. So we're going to be honoring our Unitarian heritage. And our Universalist heritage was all about faith, hope, and love. So I think our Universalist heritage, it asks us to live our faith, to kindle hope wherever we go, and to focus love in all of our actions. So this morning, let us remember where we came from theologically and honor these two great traditions. And Zeno is going to have us also honor some wonderful tradition of classical guitar. Some of you know that I've been learning the last year classical guitar. I do not sound like that. I'm just gonna point out. It's so beautiful to hear it, though. Oh my goodness. All right, so I got a question for you all. How many of you here like baseball? Okay, fair number of you like baseball. Does anybody here follow a team? Like you have your team? A few people have like teams that they follow and everything. Okay, well, I have some bad news for y'all. I just received an email that's going to be a press release. It's going to be released tomorrow by Governor Newsom, and you're not going to believe what this email says. Hear ye, hear ye. It actually says that in the email. I'm here to tell you. Hear ye, effective immediately, all citizens of California are hereby notified that baseball is now illegal within our borders, and from today onward is absolutely forbidden to watch baseball, play baseball, or go to a game. You can't even stand in your backyard with a ball and a bat. If you must, buy a Frisbee. It continues, don't ask why, we have reasons and we mean it. No matter how old you are or what team you root for, you will be in huge trouble and go to jail for a long time if you watch or play baseball in the state of California. All right? Sorry, guys. Okay, obviously, that hasn't happened. But I'm curious, for those of you, all of you here, what would you do if that did happen? What do you think you would do? If you want to take it like a little seriously, like what would you do you think?
Civil disobedience.
You would what?
Civil disobedience.
Do civil disobedience. So you protest and change the law, right? Okay, what else might you do? You would what?
I couldn't care less.
Yeah, so some people could care less. Yep, that's right. Yeah, like, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. So, Eric, what did you say? Riot. That's one way to do it. Maybe some of you might go, well, heck, I'm out of here if they're going to close down baseball. What about when football could be next? I'm going to leave. You know, not football. I know. Melanie's like, no, not football. Let's see here. So some people might move away. Would you maybe, you know, ESPN is still playing baseball. Would you secretly watch it, maybe? You know? Maybe just hang out with Eric because he likes baseball and he wouldn't tell anybody that you were doing that. So what if it wasn't baseball or football or any other sport, but imagine you woke up tomorrow and you found out that it was against the law to be a Unitarian Universalist. It was against the law to attend the church, to talk about our 7 principles, or even to sing any of our hymns. How might you respond then? Riot? Still riot. Okay, Eric's all about the riot. There you go. Well, that's, you know, one of the pickles that our theological ancestors faced, right? Back in the 1500s, that's about 500 years or so ago, in Europe, people got tired of being told that there was only one way to practice religion. And then at the same time, this was also that you had the printing press was invented. And so rather than books needing to be written out by hand, so only a very few people, usually religious people, could read it, now you had it being owned, Bibles could be owned by just about anyone who could afford it, which was the wealthy intellectual class who could do it. And they started going, hey, wait a minute. What's going on here? These interpretations, I don't agree with those. This was, people started to rebel then, and that was called, if you remember from your high school history class, it was called the Reformation. And the people who were rebelling were called Protestants. They were protesting, right? Well, that's kind of where our religious ancestors start emerging in full form. They're part of a movement called the Radical Reformation. Of course, we would be part of the Radical Reformation. That's Unitarian Universalism for you. But they talk about a new religious belief that we would call Unitarian to this day. In other words, what they saw in the Bible was that there wasn't any reference to the Trinity in the Bible, though they said, so God must be one, not 3. And that called into question the divinity of Jesus, and instead many saw him as very special, sent by God, but not a savior for sins, but necessarily just a brave and wise teacher who spoke truth to power. And he was murdered because of that. So of course, what do you think the reaction to that one was? Persecution, of course, right? And the Inquisition was out to get them.
But in the 19th century, the same thing happened to the Universalists, by the way. It wasn't the Catholic Church, it was now the Protestants who were against the Universalists, who believed that God's love was so great that everyone was saved. Okay? That was also too radical for people, and people were killed, they were exiled, they were beaten, or they lost their livelihood for those beliefs. So in response to those and their faith, obviously some people said, well, not that big of a deal for me. I'm just going to go whatever church, it's fine. Some of them said, I'm going to be a Unitarian in secret. I'll pretend to believe what I'm told. Some of them said, I'm out of here. I'm going to move to, Arizona or Oregon or whatever. At the time, it might have been the UK or other places. And others said, no, I'm going to be a Unitarian and you can't stop me. Those are the ones that we tend to know about that make history. And some went to jail, were tortured, or some killed. So I do kind of want to ask you this morning, what do you think? If Unitarian Universalism was outlawed, if your belief, some of you I know are atheists or agnostic, if that was outlawed, you had to do something, right? What do you think? What would you do? So I just want to invite you into that time of meditation. Take a deep breath. Kind of soften your eyes maybe a little bit, or close them if you like. Get a little comfortable and just think for just a moment. Who would I have been if that was the case? It's hard to imagine having our beliefs be considered outlaw. I sometimes wonder what I would do. I'd like to think I'd stand up, that I'd be like, no, you can't tell me what to believe. I'd be out there rioting or protesting or whatever things. But many people did, people like Michael Servetus and Norbert Chopek and David, who died because they actually refused to betray their conscience. We lift them up. But some also, like a guy named Socinius and John Murray, they fled to different countries. John Murray came here to the States because he knew that he could. He was a Universalist who was lost everything, his family, his wife, and was thrown out of the UK. And some practiced and taught their Unitarian beliefs in secret. We don't know mostly of them, but we know that they stuck around, including possibly Thomas Jefferson. We know from his diaries and letters that he was definitely Unitarian in his ideas. But he never attended a Unitarian church. He was good friends with Joseph Priestley, who was a Unitarian, one of the first Unitarians here in the States. And many people also did give up their faith. They're like, fine. They're pragmatic. I don't think of them as cowards. I think of them as just very pragmatic people, like, I need to live my life. I want to live. I want my family to live, right? But you'll be happy to know that it's safe to play and watch baseball here in California. But I also hope you're happy that it's safe to be a Unitarian Universalist here in the United States. So when you're ready, why don't you join Barbara in singing, and I want to invite you to stand in body or spirit to join Barbara.
Where is our holy church, where race and class unite as equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and right? Where is our holy writ, where'er a human heart a sacred torch of truth has lit by inspiration taught? Where is our Holy One? A mighty host respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our Holy Land? Within the
Well, like most, denominations and most churches, wherever you go, we tend to be a little bit focused on our local church, right? Because that's where we go every Sunday. But you might not realize how much of our church is actually all around the world, how much these different strands of our church, as well as Unitarian Universalism in general. So I don't know if you're aware that there's actually 5 churches here in Orange County. We're one of them. I don't know if you didn't know that. There's about 1,000 Unitarian Universalist churches around the country. And there's about, last I heard, this was the latest number I could get, about 600 Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalist churches around the world as well. And in fact, the largest concentration, that is per capita concentration of them, of Unitarian Universalists, is not in the United States, but it's actually in this large section of Romania. It was formerly part of Hungary. It's an area called Transylvania. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This has absolutely nothing to do with vampires, okay? Thank you so much, Bram Stoker. Yes, okay. So you note, by the way, that Ukraine is right above where Romania is in Transylvania, and the Unitarian churches in Transylvania were actually instrumental in helping refugees from Ukraine. I just want to point that out. They're very cool. So Transylvania, actually, we always think of it as vampires, but it actually just simply means beyond the forest, right? So it's a very wooded forest area that is here. It's absolutely beautiful area. It's a very poor area, but it's also very beautiful. And it's been fought over for hundreds of years between Romania and Hungary. It's currently part of Romania, but it's ethnically Hungarian, interestingly enough. So back in the 1500s, at the time of the Reformation, when everybody was coming up with all these new ideas and everything, and the Inquisition was out there, this was actually a very unique region. You'll notice that it's actually kind of, with Romania, borders the Black Sea, right? So across the way was the Ottoman Empire. So it was a crossroads between Jewish peoples and Muslim peoples and Christian peoples at that time. And Transylvania also was, at that time, home to the one and only Unitarian king. This was King John Sigismund, and he created the very first law of freedom of religion. Now, you can imagine this is the 1500s, right? The Inquisition is all around, and everything's coming up. This was radical, right? So it was called the Edict of Torda. This is supposedly a painting of that moment. King John is actually in the red to the left. This is Fenric David, who was this great orator and preacher and advisor to the king, talking about the power and the wonderfulness of Unitarianism. And this Edict of Torda declared that whatever your Christian belief, whether you were Catholic, Lutheran, Orthodox, Calvinist, or Unitarian, you had the right to worship in any way that you wanted. Now, you'll note that it did not include Jews and Muslims in that. Just saying, it was radical for its day. We'll put that out there. Now, the decree, it says, it called for each person to maintain whatever religious faith he wishes with old or new rituals, while we at the same time leave it to their judgment to do as they please in the matter of faith, just so long as they bring no harm to bear on anyone at all. I think the pagans actually put it really succinctly, right, when they say, do what thou wilt, but do no harm, right? That's why we have a lot of things in common sometimes with the various pagans. But during a period of interreligious, right, relationships expressed by war and inquisition and burning at the stake, this was an absolutely remarkable document. So how in the world did Transylvania, this little area, right, how did it become Unitarian? Well, if I mentioned also, when we were talking in our story today, Unitaries came about when people decided to rebel and to read the Bible for themselves. And one was this guy named Michael Servetus. So this is Michael. He read the Bible and he didn't find anything about it. And so he wrote about it. It was called On the Errors of the Trinity. I think it's Trinitas Erebos. It was kind of a snarky document. It did not go over well. And he was given the derogatory moniker of Unitarian. It was actually considered an insult at the time. So Servetus told his friend Biandrata, who was an Italian physician who also believed in religious tolerance. Biandrata was then persecuted, and then he fled to Poland. He was persecuted for his beliefs, and he fled to Poland for religious tolerance. It just seems so strange to us, doesn't it, today? He fled to Poland and became the personal physician to Princess Isabella. Okay, now Princess Isabella then married King John of Hungary, and they had a son named John Sigismund, and ta-da, we get the Edict of Torda. So that's a roundabout way. Isn't it kind of amazing, though? How do these things happen? How do these things get around? So this flourishing, though, of Unitarianism lasted only about 50 years in Transylvania. After that, Unitarians became outlawed by the next king, or the young king was actually killed in a horse accident. I think he fell off his horse or something. But, like we learned earlier, many people still practice their faith, at times in secret and at times openly, and with persecution. But this is why Transylvania, that small part of Romania, still to this day is Unitarian in its beliefs. So this is actually the symbol of the Unitarian churches of Transylvania. And you notice the dove, and there's kind of a circle of a snake. They chose that because Jesus said, basically, be as wise as servants and innocent as doves. And so that's what they did, because they knew that they were going to be persecuted just as Jesus knew his disciples were going to be persecuted. And that's why he gave that advice. Now, they are still quite Christian. They have a catechism. So, for example, one of the questions in the catechism is, how do we understand God? And the answer is, we perceive God as soul and love, God as spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Interesting that this idea of freedom is still a part of all of that. So Transylvania, as I mentioned, was given to Romania at the end of World War II, but then the Soviets occupied Romania, and they were forced to adopt communism, and the churches were basically decimated. A lot of their land was taken away, and there was actually, at one point, they were going to go in and bulldoze all of the churches in Transylvania. But luckily, there was the fall of the Soviet Union. They still remain Hungarian, and after that, Romania opened up. And when that happened, after the fall of the Soviet Union, many U.S. Unitarian Universalists who knew some of this history, but at that time couldn't get a hold of anybody really in Romania at that time, they decided that they were going to then see if they could help in any shape or form, right? And so they actually formed, there we go, the Unitarian Universalist Partner Church Council. So this idea was that they were going to link U.S. congregations with congregations in Transylvania, in the Transylvanian churches. And the U.S. churches, they sponsored pilgrimages to their partner churches. They set up scholarships. They helped fund schools and build new churches or renovate old ones. And in fact, our very own Phyllis, where's Phyllis? There she is, in the purple over there. She has twice gone to Transylvania and be happy to tell you about her wonderful pilgrimages there. So now, this partner church program, though, it expanded as we began to realize that there are churches all around the world, in India, and the Czech Republic, and Hungary, and India, Philippines, Poland, Uganda, and many others. And they decided then to create a different kind of partnership. And in 1995, the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists was formed as kind of a UN of UUs, as it were. And there are, since 1995, there are hundreds of Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalists churches all around the world, and most of them are part of this council. And here's all of the different countries that we currently have Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalist churches in them. The ones in black are where we have a significant number of churches, like more than a dozen type of thing. So now, a lot of the countries where Unitarian Universalism or even Unitarianism have popped up is often due to expats, particularly these days as people move around the world, right? So you've got expats from the US in particular, or the UK, but influences do come from all over. So Transylvanian Unitarianism spread to Poland and to Holland and then to UK. And from the UK, it spread via a man named Joseph Priestley, who I mentioned to you, when it came to the US. And Unitarianism was known in the US, but it wasn't really formalized as a church or a denomination until the 19th century. Universalism started in the US around the end of the 18th century. and both of them flourished, there was this reaction. So in the end of the 18th century, so we're talking like 1780 to about 1820, there was this huge fervor going across the United States. It was called the Great Awakening. And it was it's all about sin and damnation. And I don't know if you've ever heard of like this guy named was it Jonathan Edwards, who talked about, you're in the hands of the sin of an angry God, and he's holding you over the fires of hell. And, all he has to do is drop you down, and you're goner. It was just this horrible thing. And it was you had to have a public profession of your faith, and accepting Jesus. And so both the Universalists, who believe, right, that everybody was saved, and then Unitarians, who at this time were like, yeah, no, we don't really believe in hell that way. They actually began to flourish during this time because people were really turned off by the negativity of what was going on with the Great Awakening. So that's how in the U.S., that's a very quick history of how things then came here in the U.S. But what's fascinating to me is that when people became aware of Unitarianism was they start to read the Bible for themselves, they became aware of either a universal sense in the Bible or a Unitarian sense of the Bible. And so many people brave to step forward and say, hey, I'm going to question this. What's going on here? So for example, in the late 19th century, in a remote region of India, so this area called the Khazi Hills, in India, it's a very remote area. You can see up there, kind of bordered by Bhutan and other areas, where there was a man named Hajom Kishore Singh. He grew up, he was converted at 15 to becoming a Methodist, but he began to read the Bible in his own language. At that time, it was converted into his own language. And being quite intellectual and curious, he began questioning those beliefs. He did not know the word Unitarian at all. He didn't know anything about what was going on in the US at the time. He didn't know any of that. But that's what he was becoming, was a Unitarian. He believed in the unity of God. So he was talking to a friend one day, and they said, oh, I think you're a Unitarian. So he got in touch. He was like, absolutely, like, Unitarian? What's this idea of Unitarian? I have no idea. And so he then went out and actually got in and corresponded with people like William Ellery Channing, who was a big Unitarian, the founder of the Unitarian denomination, and all this sort of started this wonderful way of being there. Now, in the Khazi Hills is very much a shamanistic culture at that time. They had influences from Hinduism, but also from Bhutan, but it was very animistic, shamanistic. And Kishore said, the Methodists, when they came in, they'd done away with the fear of demons, but they replaced it with the fear of hell. And he wanted freedom from all of that. And to this day, Unitarianism still has very shamanic overtones in it within this culture in the Khazi Hills. And in the words of Kishore, he said, one God, one church, one people, one mission. And that mission is love God, love friends, and live a blessed life. Pretty straightforward. Then a similar church popped up in the Philippines this century, okay? So they were very excited to learn of it. They actually, again, kind of came up with it all on their own. And they were very excited when they heard about the Unitarian Universalist Association. They were like, wait, there's a bunch of people who believe like we do about freedom, reason, and tolerance, and love, and faith, and hope. Oh my goodness. And they actually adopted our 7 principles. They're one of the few international churches that is in fact part of our Unitarian Universalist Association, which is primarily American, with a few others. The funny thing is that they actually added an 8th principle. They don't have 7, but they made their first principle their first principle. And the first principle is, there is a God, and God is love. Which I thought was kind of interesting. So here's the thing. Each of these places where Unitarianism or Universalism has kind of popped up, right? Each of them have their own way of doing things. They have their own theologies, and they support by their own culture, right? It's very influenced by the culture that they come from. So we, Unitarian Universalists, we might not necessarily agree with all of their beliefs. Like many of those have, as I mentioned, the Khazi Hills has all these strong shamanic overtones. And in Unitarianism in Transylvania, they have a much stricter type of catechism. And in fact, in many of the churches there, men and women sit on different sides of the church. So they separate them. But we have this same heritage, right? We all come from this same place. And Reverend Morgan McLean, she's the International Office of the UUA, she said, we really aren't theological siblings. We're more like second cousins. And I was like, that's kind of true. I like that. So we don't always share necessarily the same values as our U.S. cousins, even though when we share a history with them. So for example, even the Unitarian churches in Transylvania, which is ethnically Hungarian, right? I mentioned that a couple times. They recently voted against same-sex marriage. Now, while Hungary recognizes civil unions, Romania, which they're a part of, does not recognize marriage equality. And given that they're a minority religion in Romania that's often persecuted, they walk a very fine line. So some of the leaders, so you can imagine, they're coming up with that question, what would you do, right? And many of the leaders have professed it like, I really have no problem, with marriage equality, but I can't say that. I can't do it right now because of the politics in Romania. And I do have hope that these churches and others that don't necessarily align with our US values, I think, if you think about where we started from, right? We didn't even have an LGBT, I think it was just LGB office. I think they called it the Office of Gay Affairs. That wasn't, which I thought was kind of an interesting way of putting it, but that started in 1970 for us. But it took us a long time to get there, right? Like, these places are pretty new. So I like to think that if you really do profess that God is love, there's only one direction you're going, right? It's openness and love. So now you might be curious, you might be thinking, as Phyllis and I were kind of like, hey, maybe people would want to be a partner church after hearing about all these Unitarian Universalists, and there's some big changes coming down the pike. Now, there's some big changes. They're actually not making any partnerships right now, because it turns out that there's kind of been some problems with these relationships. Some of you might be able to understand what many of those are. First of all, actually, part of it also is that the people in the Partner Church Council, as well as the sort of the UN of UU churches, they're all getting much older, and they just don't have the time and ability to do it, so they want to reimagine something else, and they're really embracing all of this change. So one problem that came up also was that, these U.S. partners, we come in all shapes and sizes. Some of our churches are really big, some of them are really tiny, some of them are like our size. Ours is probably the most common size of a church out there here in the United States. We can imagine the first ones who did this were very wealthy churches in the U.S., usually on the East Coast. And so they would partner with a church and they would be like, oh yeah, we'll renovate your church. Oh yeah, we'll do this. Now imagine if we took on a partner church. We're not a big, huge, wealthy church, we're very generous, everybody here, but you can imagine that created some resentment as different churches didn't get all of their needs met in different ways from different churches. So that was one sort of problem, that it ended up having resentment and misunderstandings and some hurt feelings. But the real reason, I think, is that we're kind of not partners, right? We Unitarian Universalists, we're incredibly generous. We are such a generous bunch, and we give monetarily quite a lot. Per capita, we are very generous. Unfortunately, that can lead to a power differential, right? Feelings of entitlement, I get to tell you now what to do, and sort of unhealthy relationships. So for example, this one actually totally cracked me up. So one of the first stories is that actually one of the things that was going on is that we all went and did pilgrimages to them, but they never came to visit us. And some church started to realize this and started inviting people to come. Okay, well, we're going to take the money that we would spend in coming to visit you. Why don't you come and visit us? Because they didn't have the money, right, to come and visit us. And then they would see how we lived versus how they lived. And it was very kind of uncomfortable. Like, well, wait a minute, you have all this stuff, and our poor churches and our poor towns, we don't have these things. So it was kind of a little bit of a challenge there. But one of my favorite stories is this funny thing was that there was a pilgrimage that went to the Kazi Hills. When you're in the Kazi Hills, they live very, very rough and everything, and they don't have a lot of running water, and in particular, they don't have toilets as we're usually. They have squat toilets, right? So you just squat over a hole in the ground, right? So the Unitarians who were visiting decided that they were going to give them a toilet. And I think they tried to hook it up, but they really didn't have the running water and everything. But it was sort of like, we want this for ourselves, like we think you should have this, right? Versus what do you need? What would you like, right? And that kind of, cultural issue, that's a nice term for it, cultural issue came about. So that's why right now this kind of, for lack of a better word, colonialist behavior has created this imbalance of power. And so we want to fix that. So the UUA has created what's called, there's a contrast between what it would be like to live in Transylvania versus New England. So they created this thing called the Leadership and Design Team. And it also includes the international office at the UUA, but it's also the partnership and the UN, the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. So they're coming together, people of all different walks of life around the world coming together to say, okay, what can we do? How can we actually partner in a more equitable kind of way? And so they're actually going to be proposing something in the next year about what we can do. So, and as they said, that we want to decenter our colonialist way of thinking. And how can we do this in a sustainable way? So it might be something like, they have small group ministries that you could go on Zoom for everybody. Different ways. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't still help out monetarily or things like that, but understanding what can we also learn from them, not just what can they learn from us. I talked earlier about how persecution happens, and we are really lucky to be here in the United States where, sometimes even being atheist, though, can get you somewhat socially ostracized. When I was in South Bend, that was a badge of honor that Unitarians were. I'm an atheist, that many of them would wear there. But imagine if your beliefs didn't just get you ostracized socially or even threaten your livelihood, but could get you killed. So this guy, his name is Fulgence, I practice this, Najajimana, and he's the founder of the Unitarian Church in Burundi in Africa. And Burundi, especially the area of his church, has been under constant violence. He preaches love, acceptance, and hope, but again, that feels really challenging to a lot of people when they want only one way of being. And in October 2015, he was kidnapped from his church office. He was taken and tortured for 11 hours, probably by the Burundi government. He was rescued by the police, ironically, but the next day was arrested and jailed. He was only released when Unitarians and Universalists around the world put pressure on the government. And he said he wrote this about his experience. He said, after word went out I was kidnapped, a minister from the Philippines started a petition of the government of Burundi demanding that I be immediately released from harm. In less than 72 hours, more than 1,200 people signed the petition. And every morning, a member of my congregation brought a list of people who signed the petition to keep hope alive for me. That evening, when everyone had left and I was alone in the dark cell, I thought about the people fighting on my behalf. I knew some of them. Many of them I will never know. I was looking for a connection between us, and the symbol that kept appearing to me was of a flaming chalice, a sign of love, compassion, and sacrifice. There is a strong power in our shared humanity, and we are all connected. And here's the funny thing, I remember this petition. I remember signing it. I didn't know this guy. I didn't know anything, but I was like, oh, that's terrible. I'm going to sign this, right? I didn't really know who he was. He now lives actually and preaches in Canada with his family. He had to flee Burundi. Reverend Fulgence, he wrote the following. He said, when strangers meet, endless possibilities emerge, new experiences, new ways of understanding, and new ways of taking action. When strangers meet, each pays so special attention to the other. Each is called to serve something larger than the self. And I think that's all really true when we meet strangers, people who are not like us. It's hard sometimes, I think, for us here in the US to realize how good we have it in terms of our freedom of belief. And even that we're struggling with sometimes. I don't think that banning sports is in the cards, but I do worry about the erosion of other things. Right? We have erosion of freedoms right now. Freedoms of our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, erosion of reproductive rights for women, erosion of indigenous rights for land and water. We have the erosion of reason, where science is being thrown out. We have the erosion of tolerance, right? We're so polarized, we just even refuse to listen to anybody who doesn't think like us. We have the rise of cynicism and the erosion of hope, the erosion of faith in humanity, and even in our churches. and the erosion, unfortunately, of love, this dehumanization and othering that we often do. And I think that our faith has this heritage to draw upon for each of us to stop that erosion, to recognize that we're in a world where we are all connected. And that's part of what understanding of being a global faith is that we are all connected. So won't you come and go with me as we learn about that land? Let us sing with Amy.
Please arise and body your spirit. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land. There will be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land. There will be justice in that land where I'm bound. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land. There will be singing in that land where I'm bound.
Great music today. I don't know who's responsible, but Steve? The whole bunch, right? Unitarian Universalism and our congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all funds for the operating budget, ministries, and programs of the church. We're ever grateful for your gifts of time, talent, and treasure. OCUUC amplifies that spirit of generosity by sharing half of the plate we receive with an organization that shares our values. This month, we're sharing with nearby, I believe it's Rhea School, elementary school in Costa Mesa in the neighborhood, in support of their robotics program. And you'll find out a little bit more about them on the screen, and also they have a really good website as well. There are multiple ways in which you can support the church and this organization. You can mail a check, you can go through our website, or use an app called Vanco Mobile. If you are a roomer, you can also simply use the basket as it is passed. The choice is yours. All the information is on our website should you need it. And as always, thank you for your generosity. Thank you. Please join in singing We Gather Together, a song that puts our intentions into words and expresses our gratitude for the many gifts we share.
We gather together, we gather as one, for peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to show that we care. We can change lives with what we share.
And of course, now is that time when we honor the important events and people in our lives. You're invited, one and all, whether you're a member, a friend, visitor, everybody is welcome to this ritual we call Joys and Sorrows. Roomers, Zoomers up there. You can see our Zoomers over here too. This is, we call it just simply Joys and Sorrows. And the idea is that if you have something that has struck you at your core and you'd like to honor that profound joy or sorrow, you're welcome to come forward and light a candle. And this is Bertie Reed, who is one of our pastoral care associates, and she will help you light your candle. So the idea is, Roomer, you're welcome to come forward to light a candle, and if you'd like to share your joy or sorrow, you can actually write it out on a piece of paper. The ushers have them here as well if you'd like to write it out. When you come forward to light your candle, simply hand me your piece of paper and I'll read it out loud. And Zoomers, of course, you can write it in the chat, and I will then read it out from there. So I invite the Roomers to come forward to light your candle, and I'll read those then out loud afterwards. And as music is played, I invite you to silently offer healing or celebration as you feel called and according to your own beliefs. Please come forward. Thank you. So let's see, I'm going to read those actually online first. So Kathy L. Says she would like a candle of joy lit. She says for their new Cavapoo puppy, Scarlet. A Cavapoo, Cavalier Poodle mix, I think. Ooh, that sounds wonderful. Yes, and Sarah J., who's our administrator, she says a candle of hope for healing for her daughter Hannah, who spent an extremely difficult day and evening in the hospital yesterday. She had an interesting thing going on with her throat. She's home now, and we appreciate all the thoughts and prayers and gratitude to the amazing doctors at Hoag. And Matthew P. says he would like a candle of concern lit. He says, I've been sick all week, and Alex, his husband, has been dealing with pain in his legs that has made it difficult to stand. Don't worry, it's not COVID. And thankfully, it hasn't affected our ability to work. One day it might, but right now we're happy we're able to function. And Peggy P. has a joy. She says, our church has resumed going to Camp Venable Pines. That's why so many people are, our kids are mostly up there. She says, I could not go this weekend, but I have very many happy memories. And Brandy, she said that she has a candle of joy. She says, grateful for reconnecting with family and friends and finding more days with peace after a very hard year. Amen to that. We also had a couple of joys and sorrows sent to me in email this week. So if you see these beautiful flowers out here that Dolly also put out pictures, I believe, of her son. So Dolly says today, October 8th, her son Albert would have turned 58 years of age. She lost him at age 44. As they say, not a day goes by. So she tells this sort of interesting story. She said Albert enjoyed the religious education classes at OCUC during the early 70s when Joan Gillen was the DRE. Back then, the children enjoyed more freedoms than they probably do these days, and they would go down to the pond that was just adjacent to the Santa Ana River each Sunday when class got out. She said years later, her son Albert told her that a body had been found at the bottom of the pond, but that the kids at OCUC had nothing to do with it. All right, so here in the room, people have lit their candles. Kathleen M. Lit a candle for Peggy, who provided such a fabulous Greek dinner last night. So I'm assuming that was like an auction item, but maybe not, because if it wasn't, Peggy, I want an invitation. Just saying, I love Greek food. Sandy M. Lit a candle of remembrance. She said, my mom would have been 101 today. And both Simone Bentley, Marilyn L., and Sunny H. all lit candles of sorrow for the people of Israel today and of Gaza. We live in very dangerous times, and that we all, Simone actually mentioned that she has relatives there and hopes for peace. Don't we all? Yeah. And in fact, I want to read you something from Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentoncourt. She's the president of our Unitarian Universalist Association, and she wrote, I pray for the people of Israel and Palestine. We are one global family living tenuously on the same human-impacted earth. Let us center ourselves in justice as we call for peace. Really horrible situation over there. Yeah. Please join, oh wait, that's right, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out thinking about Israel. That's all we need is another war right now. Oh my goodness. Well, let's take a deep breath and let's hold in love all the joys and celebrations and all the hurts and sadness, whether they're spoken or remain silent in our hearts. Let our joys remind us to be thankful, our concerns remind us to hope, and our sorrows remind us to connect with one another. And I hope all these moments that we share remind us that we are not alone. Please join Bertie in a spirit of prayer.
And Reverend John has selected a prayer today. It's a traditional Unitarian blessing from our Transylvania cousins. It's a blessing that you will see hung in almost every house and every church. Where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. And where there is God, there is no need. Amen.
Let us join together as we extinguish the flame of our chalice and say together, we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're a congregation made up of people who all believe differently. And yet, when we gather together, whether in the room or on Zoom, we make up one loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. If you're a guest or someone who is not yet known to us, I'd like to invite you to become a part of this beloved community. We encourage you to either write in the chat if you're a Zoomer, or if you are a roomer, to stand for a brief moment, tell us your name and where you're from. And if you'd like to know more about our church, including programming, please contact us. Steve has a microphone there. If you could stand, if you feel comfortable doing so, to give us your name and where you're from, our Zoomers will be able to hear you. Anybody?
Hi, I'm Jackie Riley, and I'm from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada in Reno.
Great. Welcome. I know it's not Gail as a visitor.
Yes, this is my niece, Susan Heckathorn from Manhattan, Kansas, who's spending the week with me.
Oh, great.
So happy to visit.
Great. Glad to have you here. Anyone else?
This is my grandmother, Gabi Kott, who is visiting from, well, her home in Hawaii, but the various children and grandchildren she usually lives with.
Oh, great. Glad you could join us.
Very glad we could have her.
Hi, my name's Nav. I'm visiting my parents today from Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, we're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Amy, and I'm here with my family. We're the Gebhards, and we've been gone for the past year living abroad, but we're hoping to kind of settle back in here. So
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, that's great. So where are you living abroad?
We lived in Mexico for a good portion of the year.
Oh, wow. Great. Well, we're glad to have you back. Anyone else? Okay. If you'd like to know more about our church, including programming for our youth and children, please contact us at hello@ocuuc.org, and we'll help you get connected. In addition, we invite you to sign up for our weekly email called The Blast, and we want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community. So reach out to us, and we'll help you get connected. Sean?
Okay, let's see, announcements. What's going on here? Let's see. There's some party going on Saturday. It's funny, it says Reverend Sean's 10 years. It's our partnership, the way we've been together. We've been sort of married for 10 years. It's really cool. That's how I think about it. So we also have then the auction is coming up. So Saturday, November 4th. Now the auction, if you're new and you've never been to a church auction, they're really a lot of fun. They kind of set the social calendar for the year, and kids are invited. Everybody's invited to it. It's a lot of fun. They need people to offer things for the auction, and the most popular things are things like dinners or walks places or things like that. Like I went to Scotland this summer, so I'm going to be offering a trip through the Hebridean Islands, and we're going to have some candy. So you want 2 of those? Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we're going to have this Scottish candy called Tablet there. And if you're of age, we're going to have gin and tonics because there's a very famous gin from the island of Paris. So we're going to have some other goodies and things like that are Scottish, but I promise no haggis. Okay, so, but that's the type of thing, and so people bid on a spot to come to that, and all the money goes to the church. So there's all sorts of fun things, so it's time to get that in, so please do so. And who's handling that today? the auction. So Meg over there, of course it's Meg, she's amazing. So Meg over there is going to be signing everybody up. She's also our treasurer. That's why I know she's going to be doing that. So let's see here. Also, we have a CPR class coming up. I also want to say, so for our auction, the way that it works, and I've never done this before, but I'm going to go ahead and do it today. For the very first time, we're going to have a little auction here. And I'm going to show you how it works. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold up your hand if you want one of these. And I'll tell you about what it is in just a minute.
Can they do it on Zoom too?
Oh, gosh, yes. Okay, Zoom. Yes, Zoomers. If you guys want to do this, I'm going to put you in gallery mode. So if you would like to bid on this too, you're welcome to do too. If you can, do the raise hand thing on your Zoom, if you know how to do that, or at least wave your hands. All right, we're going to try to do that, but you have to have your video on if you're going to do this. Okay, so thank you. I appreciate that. So basically, this is 4 tickets to the Orange County Community Master Chorale. It's called A Touch of Americana, and it's on Sunday, October 15th. So it's next Sunday at 4 p.m. So you can come to church and then you can go there. So it's up in Anaheim, and we have 4 tickets that are worth $15 per ticket. And it's absolutely, they do this every year, and it's an absolutely fabulous concert. And our very own Maureen M is part of it and can tell you how absolutely wonderful it is. I'm sorry? Oh, and Ted as well is also a part of that, who's another member of our congregation. So the idea is, what you do is you hold up your hand, you say you want 1 ticket, you want 2 tickets, 3 tickets, 4 tickets, whatever it is. So if you want to bid on these tickets, so they're going to be absolutely wonderful. So we're going to start out $5. So who would like to bid Orange County Chorale? It's going to be absolutely wonderful music. It's a great way to spend the afternoon. Let's see. I've got Ava Lou wants 2, and Francie, how many do you want? 1. Okay. So we've got 3 tickets. Oh, and we've got Karen would like 2. All right. So now we're down to, so I'm going to raise it up to $10. So Ava Lou would still like 2. Francie, do you still want 1? Yeah, she does. And Karen would like 2, and then Eric now would also like 1. So now see, now we have to like bid everything up, right? Okay, so now we're up to $15 per ticket. Ava Lou would still like 2. Karen would still like 2. Eric would like 1. Francie, you still want 1? Sure, she says. Okay, it's $20. You'll do that? Okay, so she's going to get tickets for everybody. So Francie, you get 1. Ava Lou, you get 2. Eric, you get 1. And Karen, you get 2. How awesome is that? Yay! Thank you, everybody. That's awesome. So that's how it works, right? So people will donate things. Sometimes they even donate things, and stuff like that. Some of our most popular ones, like, I don't know, Gabrielle, you do one every year. It's something like, yeah, there's like a fun thing that they do. Party? The poker party. There's a poker party. There's a Christmas thing that's often done. Gabrielle usually does something. The Kill Showers do a Swiss dinner. Like, there's all sorts of really fun stuff that people do. All right. So that's all what's going on here. So I will give these to Maureen. If you have a ticket, you want a ticket, see Maureen M, and she will pass them out to you. All right, I just want to leave you with these final words by Reverend Fulgence. He said, "I'm grateful for this faith that reminds me all the time to have faith in the human capacity of building a more just and fairer world, to have faith in our responsibility as we live in this place, and to have faith in the many possibilities that God has for us, and to be open to freely embrace all of them." So please join us in singing our benediction.
Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with indifference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out and all do our part. Let us go out, bring joy to each heart. Let us go out with indifference destroyed. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy. Let us go out with joy.
This is over. Let our service continue.